The saxophonist missed a note right as the champagne hit the floor. She dropped the glass when she saw it, a folded slip of white paper sticking out of the front pocket of her handbag like it didn't belong because it didn't. It hadn't been there 10 minutes ago. I knew because I had handed her the bag myself after taking our photo in front of the rooftop lantern wall. I'd zipped it closed. I'd held it while she danced. That bag hadn't left my hand. Now it had a note in it, and her entire body stiffened like someone just whispered a secret in her ear that killed a piece of her. She looked at me for too long, not confused, not curious, guilty. I pretended not to notice, smiled like an idiot. She shoved the note in her coat pocket like it was a receipt for something awful she hoped I wouldn't check. The rooftop kept buzzing. Ice cubes clinked, laughter rose and fell. No one else noticed the moment where something cracked between us, quietly, without ceremony. She went inside. I followed 5 minutes later. She said she was cold. I offered her my jacket. She said she was fine. I said, "You sure?" She said, "Yeah, just overwhelmed." I asked what the note was. She didn't answer. I asked again. She laughed and said, "Some drunk guy being stupid." That was it. Dismissed, shrugged, exhaled into nothing. Like the note didn't matter. But it mattered. Because she lied. And I knew it the second she touched her face while she said it. She always touches her face when she lies, presses 2 fingers to her temple like she's checking for a headache that isn't there. I didn't ask again. I just watched her walk out onto the terrace, lift a glass of champagne someone handed her, and flash the crowd that electric, effortless smile that got her promoted twice before 30. That's when it clicked. The note wasn't for her. It was for me. The person who slipped it in her bag knew I'd see her find it, so when she walked off to powder her nose, I walked straight to her coat pocket and read what someone clearly wanted me to see. It wasn't folded neatly. It was jammed in there, like whoever wrote it didn't have time to be delicate. 5 words. Check her Photos app, October. That was it. No name, no warning, just that. I didn't even wait for dessert. I left the party without saying a word. Walked 5 blocks to the parking garage, sat in the driver's seat of her car with my phone in my hand, and the iCloud login screen pulled up. I knew the password. Of course I did. I just didn't know what I was about to become once I hit sign in. The worst thing about checking her iCloud wasn't what I found. It was how easy it was to find. I didn't even have to guess a password or crack anything. It was right there, synced to her old account, because she never bothered disabling backups when I gave her that new phone in January. I remember her saying, "Oh, I'll sort out the accounts later." She didn't. That tiny laziness became the noose she didn't know she handed me. I scrolled to October. At first, nothing stood out. Autumn leaves, her pumpkin chai obsession, her friend Sydney's wedding. We were both there. There was even a photo of me asleep in the hotel room, arm dangling off the side of the bed like a dead man. I remember that weekend. We fought over something stupid. I'd forgotten to bring her flat iron or something. But we made up. Or I thought we did. Then I saw a burst of 10 photos, all taken on the same day, same timestamp, all geotagged in a city I hadn't visited in over a year, Indianapolis. She never told me she went to Indianapolis. I tapped on the first image. It was her, sitting in a hotel bed, sheets tangled around her waist, wearing a t-shirt that definitely wasn't mine. She was smiling, hair messy, coffee mug in hand, the kind of photo you take when you're comfortable, not alone. The second photo was worse. It was a mirror selfie. Same room, same time, and him behind her. A man I've never seen, shirtless, hands on her hips. Her eyes weren't scared. They were glowing, like she belonged there. I couldn't breathe. I opened the rest. They told the story in sequence. Room service, laughter, 2 wine glasses, her in lingerie I never saw in our bedroom, him asleep with her curled against him, taken from above, like she wanted to remember it forever. All dated October 14th. That weekend she said she was at a Women in Biotech retreat. I even dropped her off at the train station. She lied to my face with such practiced ease it made my stomach twist. I sat there in the car for what must have been an hour, didn't move. Just stared at my phone, like maybe the pixels would rearrange themselves into a version of reality that didn't feel like being gutted slowly with a spoon. A part of me wanted to call her right then. Scream, confront, smash something. But another part, the coward part, the part I hate, wanted to pretend I hadn't seen anything. Wanted to crawl back to our fake little life and be her stupid doting husband who believed every story she ever fed me. But then, something else occurred to me. Why now? Why did someone at her party slip that note into her bag? Who knew? Who wanted me to see this? And more importantly, what else were they trying to warn me about? Because this wasn't just about a weekend in October. That was the tip of something bigger, something rotten, and I wasn't going to pretend anymore. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't, not after what I'd seen. I drove aimlessly until the sun started bleeding into the edge of the sky, finally pulling into a grimy roadside diner, somewhere off Route 71. I sat there nursing a cup of burnt coffee until my hands stopped shaking. I stared at people. Strangers who didn't know their lives could be flipped inside out by a 5-word note or a timestamp on a photo. I hated them for their peace. My phone buzzed around 8:42 a.m. It was Darla, one word. Where? Not, where are you? Not, are you okay? Just, where? Like I was a misplaced coat or a late Uber. I didn't reply. I couldn't trust myself to. Anything I would have said wouldn't have fit in a text bubble. It would have shattered the screen. I finally pulled back into our neighborhood around noon, parked 3 blocks away so she wouldn't hear the car, and walked like I was sneaking into someone else's life. Our house looked the same. That stupid ceramic owl she put by the porch was still there, still chipped from when I dropped it last fall. Our mailbox still leaned slightly to the left. The life we built, it looked untouched, but now I knew it was all hollow. I didn't go in through the front. I knew the side garage keypad still worked. She'd forgotten to change that code for years. 0915, her mother's birthday. That kind of detail is sickening in hindsight. The things we remember when we think we're safe. Inside, the house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind that makes your ears fill in the silence with things you don't want to hear. I walked into the living room. She was there, sitting cross-legged on the couch, her laptop open, pretending to scroll. She looked up like she hadn't slept, like she wasn't sure what version of me would walk through the door. "Evan," she said, her voice soft, like she was talking to a cornered animal. "Where did you—" I held up my phone. The screen still showed one of the photos from October, the one where she was holding a glass of red wine, curled up in a hotel chair with her bare feet in the man's lap. Her face didn't change, no gasp, no apology. Just a quiet inhale, as if she'd been expecting it. "I didn't mean for you to find that," she whispered. That sentence. Not, "It's not what you think." Not, "Let me explain." Just damage control. She wasn't surprised I saw it. She was only surprised at the timing. I asked her who he was. She didn't answer. I asked again. Still nothing. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I pulled the note from my coat pocket, the one someone slipped into her bag at the party. I unfolded it slowly and handed it to her. She stared at it like it had teeth. "You didn't write this, right?" I asked. She shook her head, hesitant, but not confused, not shocked, just wary. I pressed her. "Then who the hell did?" Her lips moved. A name tried to form. She stopped herself. That hesitation told me everything. Someone she knew was trying to expose her. Someone in her life had seen enough to intervene, but not enough to come forward directly. And I'd bet every dollar in our joint savings that it wasn't the first time she'd received a note like that. Just the first time one had been meant for me. I snatched her phone off the coffee table. She lunged to stop me. Too late. Locked, of course. I asked for the passcode. She refused. So I played a card I hadn't wanted to. I mentioned her sister, Riley, her entire body locked up. Now, Riley and I never got along. Ever. From day one, she looked at me like I was some charity case Darla picked up in a clearance aisle. But she had one thing going for her. She hated secrets. She was also fiercely protective of her family name. Even if she couldn't stand me, she wouldn't let her sister blow up a marriage without a reason. I told Darla I'd call Riley and ask her what she knew, because I knew she knew something. Darla broke, finally. Her voice cracked like old paint. It wasn't supposed to be him. It was just supposed to be someone. I didn't understand what that meant. Not yet. But it wasn't just an affair. That much was now obvious. She didn't just lie. She planned, and whoever slipped that note into her bag, they were warning me about more than just a weekend in October. Darla refused to say his name, but it didn't matter. I already had more than I needed. While she sat on the couch, wrapped in the throw blanket I bought her last Christmas, I took her laptop into the bedroom, locked the door behind me, and started digging. I wasn't even angry anymore, just cold, numb in a way that made my hands steady. This wasn't about yelling or crying or slamming doors. This was a forensic operation now. I needed the truth, every inch of it. She hadn't logged out of her work email. Mistake number one. Most of it was as boring as I expected. Calendar invites, test result discussions, grant proposals. But then, buried in a folder named Travel Docs, I found a PDF labeled simply Avery R. It wasn't a document. It was a scanned driver's license. Full male, mid-30s. Name, Avery R. Lamott. I didn't recognize him, but something twisted in my stomach when I saw his face. Not because he looked familiar, but because I could see why she would have chosen him. Sharp jawline. Faint scar above the left eyebrow. Military-cut hair. One of those faces that feels both trustworthy and dangerous. Attached to the PDF was a reservation receipt for a boutique hotel in Indianapolis, the same weekend as those photos. 1 room. 2 guests. Paid in full by a prepaid Visa card. I Googled the name. Nothing. No LinkedIn, no company registry, no articles. Too clean. I called Riley. She didn't answer at first. But then she called me back 5 minutes later. Short breath, background noise, like she was driving. "What's going on?" she asked. "No, hi. No, what's wrong?" Just straight to the point. I didn't waste time. I asked, "Who is Avery Lamott?" Dead silence. Then a quiet, almost mechanical, "You need to leave her." That was it, like she had rehearsed it. Like she knew this day would come. I asked her if she sent the note at the party. She didn't confirm. She didn't deny. All she said was, "You were never supposed to know, but since you do, don't ask questions you're not ready to live with." I pressed harder, asked what she meant. She hung up. Back in the living room, Darla hadn't moved. She was staring out the window, eyes red but dry. I sat across from her and dropped my phone on the coffee table, screen up. The license, the reservation, the message from Riley. She closed her eyes and whispered something. I asked her to repeat it. "It was a test," she said. Those 3 words. Nothing about them made sense. Not at first. But then she started talking. Slow, fragmented, like her brain couldn't decide which truth to let out first without triggering the next one. She told me Avery wasn't just some guy. He was someone her company worked with, or rather someone the project funders used for what she called relational scenarios. Her term, not mine. According to her, there was a kind of underground practice, hiring people to build emotional profiles, intimate proximity, fabricated connections, real-life simulations to test behavioral responses in high-stress personal relationships. I told her that sounded like something out of a spy novel. She didn't laugh. She said, "You don't understand. He was never supposed to follow up. It was a 3-day simulation, a closed file. But he kept calling." That's when I realized something. She was trying to convince herself this wasn't cheating, that it was clinical, controlled. But those photos weren't simulations. That kind of intimacy doesn't happen on contract. That was real. Whatever they started, it didn't end in October. And now she was scared. Not because I found out, but because someone else was interfering. Someone had gone rogue and dropped a note into her bag at her birthday. Someone who knew what Avery really was, and maybe what he still wanted. I asked her directly, "Is he following you?" She didn't answer, just looked at the door, like she expected it to open. I didn't sleep that night, neither did she. We didn't talk after that final glance at the door. She went into the guest room, and I stayed on the couch with the lights on, and the baseball bat I kept behind the cleaning closet beside me, like I was suddenly living in some B-movie thriller. Ridiculous. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us, like the walls had ears, like that note wasn't just a warning, it was a countdown. Around 3 a.m., I checked the street cameras I'd installed a year ago after a break-in scare on our block. Nothing suspicious. No cars parked too long. No pedestrians lingering. But when I reviewed the footage from earlier that day, the morning after the party, I noticed something that made my mouth go dry. There was a man standing on the sidewalk across from our house at 6:13 a.m., just watching. Not walking a dog. Not smoking, just standing perfectly still, hands in his coat pockets, for nearly 11 minutes. No movement, no phone. Then, as the sunrise started to light up the street, he walked off screen. I zoomed in. The resolution wasn't great, but it was enough to recognize the hair, short, military cut, the building, the posture. I pulled up the photo of Avery Lammett's license again. My eyes darted back and forth between the frames like I was trying to catch a lie in motion. It was him, or someone who looked a lot like him. I rushed to wake Darla, pounded on the guest room door, half scared, half enraged. She opened it in a panic, probably thinking I had snapped. When I showed her the paused footage on my phone, she didn't even look surprised, just resigned. "I told you," she said quietly. "He doesn't let go." My throat clenched. "What does that mean?" She looked at the floor. I wasn't his first test. I staggered backward like she'd punched me in the chest. There was more? Other people? Other lives tangled up in this bizarre emotional espionage? She sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket-like armor, and finally started talking. Really talking. Apparently, her lab had a quiet arrangement with a third-party contractor tied to some private neurobehavioral firm out of Montreal, the kind that doesn't appear on Google, the kind that uses burner emails and empty LLCs. The funding came from government-adjacent sources, she said, and the goal was to measure emotional resilience under extreme personal betrayal. Their test subjects, volunteers from the scientific community. Ethically gray, probably illegal, but no paper trails. According to her, the volunteers were always told it was contained role play. Nothing physical was required. It was all psychological mapping, but she broke protocol. She let it become something else. She said Avery was different, that he played the role too well, that the lines blurred, that she started looking forward to his messages, that he made her feel recognized. She said that word like it was sacred. I asked her why she didn't end it after the test period. She said she tried. That's when the letters started. Letters? She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. Thick, rubber-banded shut. Inside were over a dozen handwritten notes. Some one-liners, others full pages. Most just said vague things like, "You're wasting your potential," or "Does he even know you?" But two of them chilled me. One said, "What if I told him what we did in the elevator?" Another, dated just 2 weeks ago, said, "I could have been the one." All of them were signed with the same symbol, a small triangle drawn in red ink with a line slicing through the top. No name, no return address, just that symbol. I asked her why she never told me. She said, "Because you still love me." That broke something in me. I'm not even sure if it was my heart or just whatever part of me still believed I knew the person in front of me. We were silent for a long time. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Evan, he's not trying to hurt you. He's trying to become you." I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was too absurd. Until I remembered something else. Something I hadn't thought about until that moment. At the rooftop party, before the note was found, someone had complimented my shoes. A man I didn't recognize, mid-30s, dark green coat. He'd said, "I've got a pair just like those." At the time, I thought it was nothing, a polite comment from a stranger. Now, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on the front door. Not a loud one, just a quiet, polite tap. 3 precise knocks. Not the kind neighbors do, the kind people who don't want to be noticed do. I didn't open it. I watched from the upstairs hallway window instead, barely breathing. A man stood on our porch, same building, same jacket. But he never turned to face the door. He just stood there, hands calmly behind his back, like he was waiting for someone who was already late to something important. He stayed for 6 full minutes, then walked away. I didn't chase him, I didn't film him. I just stood there, rooted, as this eerie calm settled over me. This wasn't just cheating anymore. This wasn't even about a marriage. It had mutated into something else, something more calculated. I felt like we were part of a script someone else had written, and they were testing how closely we'd stick to it. Later that afternoon, Darla had a doctor's appointment, the first time she left the house in 3 days. As soon as her car turned off our street, I went to her office upstairs. She'd started locking it again. I had to take the door off the hinges to get in. I didn't even feel guilty. She lost the right to privacy the moment she handed someone else pieces of my life. Her office was a disaster, not in the physical sense. The room was clean, shelves alphabetized, files meticulously labeled. But there was something deeply off about the atmosphere. Cold, staged, like it was made to look exactly like how someone thought a real office should look. Then I noticed the drawer that had tape residue around the edges, like it had once been sealed shut. Inside, beneath a fake tax folder, was an external hard drive. No label, no encryption. Just a red USB cord, coiled like a vein. I plugged it into my laptop. There were 4 folders. The first was named Script01. Inside was a document titled AR_Lab Pilot Outline. It was a detailed schedule, timestamps, dialogue blocks, alternate responses. Like a film shooting script, but messier. Some lines were highlighted with her initials. Others were marked AVR. There were emotional prompts like, if subject displays detachment, escalate tension via financial confession, or initiate trauma bonding via controlled vulnerability. Mention mother. My name was mentioned 12 times. Tendency toward appeasement when threatened. Possible fixation on perceived moral righteousness. Watches partner's hands when nervous. They weren't just observing me, they were studying me. I opened the next folder, Vids Raw. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The footage was clean, stable, like security cam video. But the angles were too perfect. There were 3 camera feeds, one in our kitchen, one in our bedroom, and one I didn't recognize. A narrow room, almost clinical, with a padded bench and 2 chairs. A small table, a mirror. On the wall, a whiteboard with my name written at the top. Then I saw her in the frame, Darla, sitting calmly, hair tied back, wearing the same sweater she wore during our anniversary dinner last year, talking to someone off screen. Avery. His voice was faint, but unmistakable, soft, charismatic, almost playful. Let's run it again, from the part where you tell him you're still in love. She didn't argue, she rehearsed it, word for word, line by line, like it was a scene. Like our life, our marriage, had been a performance designed by committee. My fingers started shaking so badly I almost dropped the laptop. The 3rd folder was encrypted. I couldn't open it. But the file size was massive, nearly 70 gigabytes. I could only imagine what was inside. Audio logs, emails, a backup of someone else's life. The last folder was called Control Persona. Inside were Photoshop files, resume templates, doctored certificates, all tied to one name, Evan L. Myers. My name, but with a different birth date. Different education, no marriage record. They'd built a fake version of me. I shut the laptop slowly, sat on the floor, just breathed. There are some moments in life where your sense of self detaches. Not emotionally, literally. Like you're hovering 3 inches behind your own head, watching yourself become someone else. I sat there for hours, I think, maybe more, until I heard her car pull up outside. I didn't confront her, not yet. I just put the door back on its hinges, returned the hard drive, and made her dinner like nothing had happened. Stir fry. The same meal she cooked the night I proposed. She smiled when she walked in. Tired, software familiar. But all I could think was, how many times has she practiced this moment before? The problem with pretending everything is normal is that eventually your body stops cooperating. That night, after dinner, I watched Darla move around the kitchen, putting dishes away, humming something tuneless under her breath. And every step she took felt like a lie. I couldn't tell if I was observing her or if she was observing me. Was I reacting naturally? Too slowly? Did she know I knew about the rehearsal footage? Was she improvising now? She looked up once, caught me staring, and smiled the same half smile she always used when she thought I was lost in thought. But I wasn't. I wasn't even fully present. I was calculating something I never thought I'd have to consider in my own marriage. Who is this person, really? And what is her endgame? Around 1 a.m., I crept back into her office. This time, I took photos of everything. Every screen, every file list, every document. I backed up the external hard drive onto my own USB. Not because I had a plan, I didn't, but because I needed proof. If something happened to me, if this went somewhere darker, I needed someone else to see what I saw. And deep down, I wasn't convinced I'd come out of this whole. The next morning, I sent a burner email to myself with a full copy of the backup and uploaded a mirror folder to a secure cloud under a false name. Then I cleared the history, wiped the drives, hid the USB in the basement freezer inside a Ziploc bag, stuffed inside an empty pint of ice cream behind the frozen peas. It sounds crazy, I know, but when your life becomes an experiment, paranoia starts to feel like protocol. That afternoon, I got a text from an unknown number. You're not the first, but you're closer than any of them. I stared at it for over an hour before replying. Who are you? No answer. 2 hours later, another message. Ask her about the Berlin program. Berlin? She's never been to Germany. At least, that's what she told me. The farthest we've traveled was Vancouver, and she barely survived the flight. She hates airports. Hates turbulence. She gets hives when she has to deal with TSA. But when I walked into the bedroom that evening and asked her point blank, "What's the Berlin program?" her face froze. Not confused, not surprised, just still. She sat down slowly on the bed, like her legs had just received a weight they couldn't hold. Her hands went limp in her lap. She whispered, "How do you know that name?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The question itself told me everything. She nodded once, almost to herself. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I was supposed to meet you there." That sentence shattered something in my skull. Not physically, but conceptually. Like I was hearing an echo from a version of my life I'd never lived. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My voice was a rasp by then, barely human. "What do you mean, meet me there?" She looked at me for a long time. Her expression softened. Not pity, something worse, something closer to resignation. "You were part of phase 2. That's why I chose you. Not just because you were compliant, because you were the control. You were never supposed to be activated." Activated. That word did something sharp to my throat. Like it didn't belong in the same airspace as our marriage, our memories, the birthday party, the little house on the corner of Cedar and 14th with the chipped owl statue out front. "You're lying," I said, but it came out wrong. Weak. She didn't blink. It was always going to happen. I didn't want it to be now, but he forced it. Avery's gone off book. He wasn't supposed to interfere this soon. Now, it wasn't just surreal. It was unreal. I felt like a lab rat who suddenly realized the maze walls were glass, and beyond them were faces I couldn't recognize, watching, scribbling notes, deciding when to feed me and when to lock the exits. I turned to leave. She stood up and said my name once, gently. I ignored her, went into the garage, got into the car. I don't even remember where I drove. I just needed to get away from the house. From her. From the impossible weight of what I'd just been told. Somewhere outside the city, I pulled over to an empty field, killed the engine, and just sat there. The truth was a splinter now, wedged so deep I didn't even know what parts of me were real anymore. Had I been selected? Constructed? Were my choices even mine? Then, as I sat in the dark, with my phone face down on the passenger seat and my heartbeat too loud in my ears, the radio came on. By itself. Not loud. Just enough to make me freeze. It wasn't music. It wasn't static. It was a voice. Male. Familiar. Calm. And he said very clearly, "You shouldn't be this far ahead, Evan." I didn't remember turning the radio on. And I sure as hell didn't expect it to talk back. "You shouldn't be this far ahead, Evan." The voice wasn't Avery's. It was smoother, older, the kind of voice you associate with lectures in the dark university halls, the kind that carries too much weight behind words you don't want to understand. I stared at the dash. My hands were frozen around the steering wheel. The voice didn't come back. It was just that one line, then silence, then static, then nothing. I yanked the battery out of the radio system, not unplugged, ripped out. I didn't care if I broke it. I needed silence. Real silence, the kind that belonged to me, that couldn't be programmed or observed or pulled apart by analysts in white coats. For the first time in 3 days, I cried. Not just a few broken sobs, full collapse. The kind of grief that doesn't sound human. My chest caved in on itself. I cried for the man I thought I was, for the love I thought I had, for the years that now felt suspiciously scripted. I cried for Darla, too. For the version of her that maybe existed, maybe didn't. But either way, I would never get back. And after a while, it passed. That was the strange part. It passed. The more I sat with it, the more I realized something. The illusion was theirs. The data, the scripts, the rehearsed trauma bonding. But the pain was mine. And if the pain was real, then I was real, and I could still choose what came next. I went back home that morning. Darla was gone. No note, no packed suitcase, just gone. But I found something on her desk. A key, no label, just a single silver key taped to a flash drive. The USB was encrypted, but it unlocked with my birth date. Inside was one file, a video, time-stamped just a few hours before I got home. It was her. She looked tired, not broken, not guilty. Tired. Her voice was soft, almost hoarse, like she'd been crying before recording. "I didn't choose you as an experiment," she said. "I chose you because you reminded me of something real. You loved without angles. I twisted that. I lied. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know, everything that came after the program, that was me, not the script. I stayed because I didn't know how to exist outside of you." She looked away from the camera for a moment. "Avery isn't looking for me anymore. They shut him down. I'm leaving the others behind too. I don't want this life. I'm going somewhere no one will ever ask me to simulate anything again." Then she held up the key. "This opens the locker at bus station 42. You'll find everything they had on you. You can burn it, or publish it, or throw it in the ocean. But at least you'll know, and maybe that's enough." The video ended just like that. I sat there for a long time. That afternoon, I went to the station. Found the locker, opened it. Inside was a single leather folder. I didn't open it, not yet. Instead, I walked outside, sat on a bench, and watched the buses come and go. Real people, living messy, uncontrolled lives, missed arrivals, wrong connections, spilled coffee, kids crying, people arguing on the phone, pure, unfiltered chaos. It was beautiful. Eventually, I opened the folder. I read the files, everyone. And when I got home, I lit a fire in the backyard. I burned it all. Not to forget, but to finally begin. It's been 11 months now. I live in a smaller city, near a lake. I work part-time doing carpentry with a local guy who's been teaching me to build things that last. Things with weight. I sleep through the night. I don't check my rearview mirror anymore. I adopted a dog. His name is Hollow because he came to me scared and silent, and now he howls every time he's happy. There's someone new too. Her name is Meredith. We met at a bookstore. No surveillance, no agendas. Just two people reaching for the same copy of Slaughterhouse-Five. I told her I'd let her take it if she let me buy her coffee. She said only if it came with a cookie. Now every Sunday, we walk Hollow through the park and make up fake names for the squirrels. Sometimes I think about Darla. I don't hate her. She was caught in a system. So was I. But we both escaped. And maybe that's the only ending that really matters. We made it out.